All right, here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Kendrell Watkins, and I am joined here with Ari Beck of Stetson Cross Country. I have Courtney Van Loo for FGCU Volleyball, and I have Darby Brennan, field hockey, Liberty University. I have them all here, and what we want to do is we want to go over last night's, what was it, The Last Dance. It was a documentary on Michael Jordan and the last championship season and all the difficulties that they had to endure and overcome in order to achieve success. And yeah, let's just get into it. First, how you guys been just going through the quarantine? How's everything been? How have you guys been doing it with no sports, school, staying at home? How does it work?
It has been an interesting time. A learning experience definitely on how to adjust to life with no sports. For me, this is probably my first time in 13 years I haven't touched a volleyball in more than 3 weeks. So learning how to adjust, learning new hobbies to keep myself busy, it's been a learning experience.
All right. And Darby, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. I'm actually still in Lynchburg, and I've been able to, go out to the field and train a little bit. But it is different. Our spring season is definitely like a big part of what it takes to being like a field hockey player, and to have that kind of taken away from us, it does suck, and that's where we learn the most going into season. So it's been hard, but, just finding like new hobbies and things to do has been nice and keeping me busy.
All right. All right. What about yourself?
I would say I'd be slightly more fortunate since running, you don't really need to have anything else. Unfortunately, though, I have a stress fracture in my femur, so can't really be doing that either. So that's, kind of ruins the fun for me, but kind of like them, just finding new hobbies, staying busy with schoolwork, writing papers left and right, normal stuff.
Okay, cool. Well, I wanted to get into it. First thing I wanted to get into was because the documentary itself. Are you guys even old enough to remember this happening?
No.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember, I mean, what have you heard just from the Bulls' legacy, or just what are some things that you guys may have heard about, or some things that have been passed down to you via folklore or just YouTube? What? I don't know.
Growing up in Indiana, basketball is such a big thing. So Michael Jordan is definitely a name I heard all the time. So I knew a little bit about him. But watching this documentary, it feels like it's kind of my first time seeing him play. Almost like I get to kind of experience what it was like, what basketball was like during that time period. So that's been really cool. Even though I'm not in the moment, the way they've done the documentary, I do kind of feel like I was there at some of those games.
Okay. Well, the first question I wanted to ask was just starting it right off the bat, because it opens up in episode 3, and the first thing that they approach is Dennis Rodman. What do you guys know about Dennis Rodman, just from him being a former Piston and moving over to the Chicago Bulls for their second three-peat? But what do you guys know about? What do you guys know about him first and foremost, if anything at all? So I know what to fill in.
I've heard of him plenty of times before the watching the documentary. I know he's different and unique in many of his own ways. He very much takes to his individualistic personality, takes pride in himself, doesn't care what other people think of him, because he is who he is. He actually talks about it in, I believe, episode 3, that when he was with Madonna, that Madonna told him, do what you want to do that makes you happy. Don't let anyone else judge you for that. And he's proven that time and time again. One of the last big times I've heard of him was when he went to North Korea to talk to Kim Jong-un. And, he said, I had a good talk with him. People were mad at him for it, but he's like, I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do. And I respect that from him, even if it seems kind of weird to many of us.
Okay. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
I think more from a basketball perspective, I learned this more last night, is how dynamic he was on the court with energy, defense, just kind of throwing his body wherever. A lot of people, like the Michael Jordans of the world, get a lot of credit, and sometimes I feel like the Dennis Rodmans kind of get looked over a little bit, but they're such an integral part of the team and the team chemistry. And that's something that I think it was cool that was kind of a spotlight over the episode.
Okay. Darby, chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Dennis Rodman, like, as a person is just so interesting. I got the chance to watch his 30 for 30 on ESPN actually before watching this past episode. And I just think he's so interesting because, you know, he didn't really play basketball in high school and he kind of just jumped over that and just like went straight into like a division, you know, top program. And then just to like get drafted, I just think it's kind of crazy, like as a young athlete to see like he just had all this natural talent and to work with. But, you know, as a person, I think he's pretty crazy, you know, just with like all the hair and he just kind of like changed the NBA culture as a whole, especially during that time. So I think he's so interesting. Yeah.
All right, well, I wanted to open it up because, again, I wanted to make this more relatable. So, Rodman, just one time during the actual show, he requested to take a vacation mid-season. It's like, I need a break. I need a vacation. So I wanted to ask you, just difficult teammates. You could speak to, I don't want you to name anyone, but just situations that you may have heard of or been a part of in your past. Just how do you deal with them and just working towards your ultimate goal? Like, how do you work with them?
I think like definitely, you know, sometimes I think I can also personally be a difficult teammate. So I've definitely had some great leaders, you know, get me on the right track and get me to where I'm going. But I think what is important, especially, you know, whether you're dealing with one or you are one or whatnot, but like, what is the ultimate goal? What are you trying to get accomplished? And like, once that is set, then you're all just going to be working towards it, whether, you know, a person is difficult or not. Like having that same one track mind really kind of just generates you forward and keeps you moving as a team. And I think that's just like the probably biggest thing.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure every one of us have been difficult, and like you said, Darby, and a lot of us have also dealt with a lot of difficult teammates. So I think it's just, you know, finding that balance between what do you need to do to get yourself ready and what do I need to do to get myself ready. So for me, especially back in high school, I would sit there right before a race on a cooler or on a chair or whatever, and people would get like worried because I looked mad. And it wasn't. It was just me focusing in, you know, shutting everything else down and just thinking about my race. While other people prefer to dance around and sing around and things like that. And sometimes that breaks that conscious or that focus and, you know, that conscious effort to, you know, zone everything out to prepare myself. And that's like just some little difficulty where it's just like different types of people and you have to, you know, be able to find that balance between those two. Do you know, step away from them or say like, hey guys, can you like settle down your partying, I guess you could say, right before a race, but you know, we all have to figure that out. Obviously that's a small example, but I'm pretty sure we all have bigger examples and things like that with actual teammates needing something to go with everyone to go out of their way. But I think, yeah, you just have to find that balance.
I also think you kind of, as like in team sports, you're always going to have maybe that one difficult player or just someone who's a little different. And I think more of like in leadership roles and just caring about your teammates, it's finding out more about them and understanding why that they are that way. I think that helps integrate the teammate into the culture you have. And then from then on, they will know that you care about them and then they would be more willing to buy into the team goal.
Okay. So you guys, so Darby, you were the difficult teammate, you're saying?
I don't want to talk too bad about myself, but I think sometimes, you know, like I can be a head case and I think that's okay. I think, you know, emotion and like showing that you're passionate is okay, especially in like a sport that you like love. So, but I think, yeah, like sometimes I can be a little bit difficult and let my emotions get the best of me, but having those leaders to like bring me back in, like that's, yeah.
That's awesome because I didn't see us going there. I didn't see just a difficult teammate being here. So it's awesome. Know thyself.
Yeah.
And just how that's awesome. Well, another thing I did want to touch on because just I guess the hiring of Phil Jackson because they had Doug Collins as a coach. He was their coach, and it took them a couple of times just to get past the Pistons, and they weren't getting through the Pistons just during their Eastern Conference run. So Jerry Krause, what he did was he made the decision to change coaches. I wanted to ask, do you think that that was fair? That he removed them just after 2 or 3 years of being in the conference finals and not being able to break through. What do you think?
I don't know if fair would be the word I'd go with. I think from his standpoint, that's what he thought was best for the program at that point in time. Looking back, it did end up being a good choice, but sometimes that may have been a bad choice. And that's just something from Jerry's point where he needs to learn what is good for the program and what is not good for the program.
Gotcha.
Yeah, throughout the documentary, my opinion of Jerry has gone back and forth a lot. Some of his decisions, at least the way he went about the decision, I didn't agree with. Like straight up telling people, hey, this is it and whatnot. Michael Jordan says it pretty well. Like, I don't want anybody that doesn't put on a uniform and is out there on the court to make a decision for who gets to play and whatnot. And I can see that conflict and tension. And so like what Courtney said, fair wouldn't be the best way, but if you're looking at it in more like I guess you could say business way, it seems essential because, you need that change to sometimes get over that hump. Because if it's called insanity if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Well, I guess I wanted to ask, as far as a coaching decision, how do you feel coaches can ultimately put you over the top? Just having, a team that, you're talented, but where does the coach provide that extra component just to put you guys over the top and put you in this a situation to lead or win?
I think one of the testament of being such a good coach is being able to take talent and turn it into a great team and a winning team. There are a lot of players who are very good and very talented, but they need some pushing and someone to get them to really overcome that hump and to turn into winners. So I think like that shows how good of a coach he was to take the talented players, to keep them on track, to get them to listen to him, and then to push them to measures that nobody else seems to match.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think she kind of like hit the nail on the head with that one. Like to be a good coach, it's to know your players for all their differences, and what makes them like individual, but taking all of their combined talents and making them essentially a great team. And yeah, I just think.
Well, let me ask, do you believe coaching different do you believe in the method of every player is coached the same? Or sometimes you have to coach players a little differently?
No, yeah, for sure. I think you can't coach every player the same. I think we're all different as people. And so, one person might like to get screamed at or something, and that kind of, gives them that energy to go hard. But one person might need to like slow down and kind of explain so I think that like is totally what separates them and like makes you a good coach is like when you can understand that and then use their talents. It just,
Yeah, I agree with that. And Phil showed it real well, like just talking about his philosophy in the 4th episode, how he brought things from like Native American cultures and other cultures and ideologies and beliefs and brought them all together and like looking at all these different ways people do things, ways people approaches things, and how he brought that to his coaching. You can't treat Rodman like you treat Jordan, like you treat Pippen. They're all different guys. Just like Darby said, you can yell at somebody, but you can't yell at someone else. And it just takes knowing the players and knowing that what you can do to them to push them the right way and to make sure you don't scare them away, I guess you could say.
Okay. But does that create like a dissension within the team? Just if you see someone being coached differently, because sometimes it could be perceived as special treatment.
I think the coach needs to discuss that with each individual player. For example, with me, when I played hockey, my coach would tell me, hey, I know you're good at taking somebody yelling at you and just brushing it off. So, when somebody gets frustrated or whatever, when I get frustrated, I might take it out on you or like make it look like I'm taking it out on you, but it's for everyone. So don't like take that personally. And I was fine with that. With our team now, for example, here at Stetson, when we bring Kenyans over, they tend to be a bit more, their shins tend to be sensitive on, say, pavement or whatnot, due to running on dirt their entire lives. So when we do some drills, when we do some practices, our coach tells us, hey, they might not do some of these things to preserve their legs, to make sure that they're okay, because we've run on pavement our entire lives, they haven't. So as long as the coach clarifies this and makes sure and ensures that each of the players understand why they're being coached differently, I think it's okay. But if you don't and you keep everyone in the dark, that's when I think it can cause some problem between teammates.
I think it just kind of comes down to communication and how well the coach can get that point across.
I think it also like falls on the players too, and just like not taking it personally, the way like, and to elaborate on that, like the way a coach coaches someone else, like I feel like I shouldn't be taking that personally because, we kind of have our own relationship, and I feel like that's when you get into comparison, and that's when if you have that on your team, you kind of like are gonna start to dip because as players, like you shouldn't compare your relationship to someone else who's on a team, or you shouldn't compare your relationship to even other players on the team to, someone else. Just so I think that just if like a coach can kind of like squash that from the get-go, it will be beneficial to everyone in the situation.
Got you. And I mean, I guess I kind of another thing I wanted to touch on was just overcoming things, because I know if you look at the documentary, it took the Bulls a while to reach the finals. Like it took them maybe like 3 or 4 years. I know they got beat twice by it took them probably like 3 or 4 years, something around there. So I wanted to ask you, just what did the documentary teach you? Like if you can think back to a time where just in your sport or another sport, because I know you guys play a lot of different sports sometimes. So just overcoming a certain obstacle that you can remember and how it made you a better player, a better student athlete, or just a better person.
I mean, I think it just, it reiterates that kind of sense of like, keep pushing, your time's going to come. And I think that is just like something every athlete should take with them, and just like in life in general, even outside of the sport, is just like, that championship day, that's going to happen sometime. That's going to fall. If you keep putting the work in, like you're going to reap the rewards. Like maybe not at that time, it may be having to be a long-term goal, but eventually like you're going to reap the reward. And so I just think like staying with that discipline, it's just like, it's almost like a lifetime mindset, and just taking this example and this series and this one moment, like, and applying it to my life, and just with everything, with, with school, with sports, and just like getting over every obstacle and every hump.
I think it did well at showing that it wasn't like just a small single time or something like that, because sometimes people think, oh, a single injury, or oh, a single defeat. But this was a multi-year thing where it was multiple defeats. It was a big roadblock and things like that. It takes me back to between my 8th grade and sophomore year of high school. During that time, I had an injury. I lost a close friend and a coach during that time, and it was just everything was just all over the place for me. I had to figure out what I was doing, refocus myself, things like that. It was just a really difficult time. Emotionally, I was a wreck. Psychologically, my running, even though I stayed at the same level competitively or whatever, I didn't improve. I hit a slump. I just couldn't get out of things. Luckily, academically, I was still doing great. But it was just a hard time. And I think this documentary really showed back to like, even though through these long periods of time, as long as you keep persevering, keep trying to push through it, you'll get through it eventually. And you just have to stay positive and keep fighting.
Or anything you want to add?
I would say they did a great job of showing the blood battle between the two teams. I feel like everyone has that one team that every time you play them, it's personal. It's going to be a death match to the very end. For us, we have a conference team that is very true for us. It's personal. And I think that they did a really good job of showing it, showing how competitive it can get and how emotional it can get. And I thought it was very interesting, and I felt like I was really relating to that portion.
What part was most interesting to you? Like, just as far as, like, was there a point where it just hit home or just resonated with you, where it's like, yeah, that's it, that's how I felt?
The like just the intensity of every single game, and then how serious it got at the end. You know, the handshaking, not handshaking. There are moments where you really, really don't want to be sportsmanlike, but you have to, because that's just the kind of players you've always been. And it showed, like, it's interesting how the times have really changed talking about that.
Got you. And just speaking on that, when it comes to sportsmanship, because we all know, I know with myself, there's always the infamous handshake. Or the walking off between the Detroit Pistons when they were finally defeated. And they got ran through just that last time. Like, it took them a while for the Bulls to actually beat the team, but when they beat them, they really beat them. Like, it was 4-1. And they sent them home really fast. And they didn't take it well. And I know for that reason, I know Isaiah Thomas, he was kind of he took the brunt of the criticism during that time, because it was, you know, quote unquote, his team. And he was left off of the 92 Dream Team. I know specifically for that reason. So he really lost a lot from that. And just his legacy kind of took a tough, because I thought he was probably one of the best point guards ever. I thought he was better than Steph Curry, just throwing that out there. But, you know, time wins all the time. So, you know, Steph Curry's playing now. But what did you guys take from that, and just sportsmanship, and how can it affect or hinder your, you know, just being a student athlete, and how much importance do you put on it?
I would say as an athlete, especially a professional athlete, you have people watching you all the time, watching your every move. So that's where you kind of need to really make sure you're staying sportsmanlike, because it does follow you a long way. People don't forget the bad things you do. They sometimes forget the good things, but that one mistake or that one major event that people are going to remember, and that's how they're going to almost define you. So I think it shows that sportsmanship isn't really talked about as much, but it's a huge part of the sport and the game that we're in. It's very important with how you carry yourself, especially because you do have so many people looking at you on your platform.
Somebody add something to that. What do you think? What do you think about Courtney's thoughts?
I mean, I think it's just like not even a question, almost, as like being an athlete. I think my coaches have kind of like really like pushed for that. Like, sportsmanship isn't a question. You just do it. It shows, you know, it shows your humility, and it's just like, I can't imagine walking off, let alone someone else walking off, just because I feel like in this generation, like, everybody I've come across is just like, you just shake hands. It is what it is. And so like to see that, especially in the documentary, is kind of like, it's kind of like almost disbelieving, like, wow, like, I can't believe someone would actually like think that's okay to do.
My sport's in a unique position, in the fact that when we finish our competition, you just walk away because you're too busy dying, trying to catch your breath. So it's weird in that regard, but at the same time, like, I feel like cross country and track, it's different than every other sport because there's a different type of camaraderie. When we go to an event, it's not just us and one other team. It's a big number of teams. During the conference preview meet down at FGCU, Liberty was there, we were there, FGC was there, then USF was there. But before the race, the Liberty team came over and asked if we wanted to do a prayer. We did that, and then we broke it down with ASUN. So unfortunately, USF had to walk out because they weren't part of the ASUN. But it shows that type of camaraderie that, you know, we have in running, and I think that's something that is somewhat echoed throughout every other sport, and it just shows that good sportsmanship that, no matter what, we're still, we have a love for the sport at the end of the day. We all love it, and, without each other, we can't have a sport because you have to compete against someone. So showing that sportsmanship is key, and just respect for the game in general.
I think it's awesome to be totally, just to be totally honest, that you guys have so much sportsmanship. Like, it really speaks to being a student athlete, because, I wasn't a student athlete. So, when I'm outside playing, like, trash talk is just part of the game. It's actually fun, especially if you know you're going to lose. I like to play basketball, and I'm not that good. So, I know I'm going to lose every now and again. But I'm going to talk trash up until that moment I lose, because it's just fun.
Yeah.
It enhances the game. So, but I wanted to ask you, what did you think about that particular moment? Did you believe they were wrong in not shaking hands? Do you think that, because back then, like, they did show with the Celtics that it was something that the Celtics didn't do? Do you feel that they were being, it was something that they were pointing out just because it was the Pistons and no one really liked their style of play at the time? Like, what do you guys feel?
I think it was unacceptable regardless, even when the Pistons did it, or not the Pistons, the Celtics. Like I said, you have to have respect for the game. And, the previous 2 times they beat Chicago, did Chicago walk out on them? No, at least from what I gathered, they didn't. So why would you do that to them? It's just unacceptable to disrespect the game that much, because, they might think you're disrespecting the other team or whatever, but it's the game at heart, and if you really care for it, you don't do that, at least in my opinion. Everyone has their own.
There have definitely been moments where I've wanted to just walk out. I get a little intense during games, trash talking more in my head than out loud, just because people can hear you when they're sitting very close to the court, and I don't need our boosters or our president hearing that. That's not good. So I could see where, from an emotional standpoint, they're coming from, where they're so frustrated with this is kind of the change in the culture where they were that top team, the winning team, the bad boys, and then all of a sudden they're getting smacked by the one team that they've had a rivalry against the entire time period. So I could see where they're coming from. I don't know if I would consider it acceptable now in these times, but like we've all said, back then it was different. Like, just the way the game was played and the interaction between players.
Yeah, I think off of that, it's just also like a respect piece. It kind of makes me question the respect that they had for the other, the other players, their opponents. I feel like sometimes, whether I'm playing like a really big rival or not, like, I still respect them as an athlete. So, like, to not shake their hand is almost like questioning that regard. But yeah, I think both of these guys have said just about all it has to say of just, it just being a different time, but also in this kind of time, nobody would do that.
I'm just surprised that you guys do so well at it, because I know, especially in the field hockey that I've seen and in volleyball, you guys get really intense.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked that there aren't a couple of words said across the net or just in passing.
They're more to our teammates when we're turned around. Definitely in our huddles, yeah, they come out a little bit.
Yeah, and Ari, I know you guys kind of pretty much plop over when you cross the finish line.
Yeah, so we can't really say too much. Yeah, every now and then there's a couple elbows thrown here and there, maybe a push. But I mean, like, that's just part of the sport. When you're all clumped up and you don't want to fall and get spiked, kind of have to push around. But nobody really says too much.
Interesting. And I wanted to ask you guys, just when it comes to just a sheer thing of just going up against someone that, because I know, we have our arguments with who is the greatest. I'm going to say Michael Jordan, because, that was just my era. That's what I saw. So I seen dominance, and just going back to just a part in the film where in the '88 season, he was the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. He won the All-Star Game MVP. He won the dunk contest. So he was just out here winning. So it was just one of those things where just dominance. How do you guys deal with that? Because I know the Detroit Pistons during the documentary, they just had one point where they actually made the Jordan rules, where they had a way in which they dealt with him specifically when going up against the Bulls. Have you guys ever had to deal with that just in your sport alone? Like, is there a time that you can think of and just how you guys went against it? Or if you were that person, how did you feel that teams played you? So.
I can go ahead and talk about it from a running standpoint since it's slightly different.
I want to hear this. Yes.
So back in high school, I was the dominant runner in my area, especially my senior year. And our main rival school, they knew they couldn't beat me in our conference or in our county race. I'm not trying to be like. I won the race by like 30 seconds or 20. I can't remember, but I won. So I'm trying to be humble here, but
stick your chest out. Say it with your chest. Don't worry about it.
In that case, it's not let's go after him because he can't win by himself. He can win the race individually, but he can't win it as a team. So what they did was, in running, the way you win is having the least amount of points, and you get points by what position you come in. So they said each person gets on another runner from that team. So their best guy tried hanging on with me for a while, and I think he ended up second or third. So, I mean, it's not like they were far off position-wise. But then coming in the rest of the race, almost every one of their guys beat us man for man. So we ended up losing by 3 points. So that was one way we would tackle it. Another way that we do it now is our best runner, we might say, go ahead, try to win the race. The rest of us pack up and, work together. So it's more of like countering the rest of the team rather than countering their dominant runner or player because, I mean, in running, if the guy's faster than you, he's faster than you. It's not too much else you can do, especially when you're not up at the front. Like, I'm not up at the front anymore. I'm in the middle of the pack. So I would say, you have to work with those around you to try to counter the rest of the team to try to offset him. And that's just how it goes for us.
Gotcha. All right. So Ari has spoken. What do you got?
I mean, for field hockey, it's kind of hard to just for one person to do it all. I mean, obviously there are cases and everything, but I mean, having a good coach to structure a certain game plan or press to kind of eliminate that person, and then also identifying their strengths and taking that away too, to kind of leave them optionless and make them use their weaknesses and putting them in hard situations. But I guess that's all you can really do for field hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think probably the thing that made Michael Jordan is so great, not just awards. Oh, you go.
No, sorry, keep going.
Okay.
We'll circle back to you. We'll get you.
I would say one of the things that makes him so great is not the awards that he won, but them having to make a separate offense or separate defense just for him shows how unstoppable he really was. Like in volleyball, it is very easy to have to key on one player to make your scouting report based around stopping one specific player. We've had to do that in the past where it's, hey, this team is good. We match them pretty much evenly, but this one person you have to stop right away or the game will be that much harder to win. So I think we've definitely had to do that. I know people have definitely had to do that against us. We do have specific people who are more of the dominant side, even though it is a team sport. Certain people tend to score more points, and that other teams will scout specifically against those people and put different setups against us so that way they can stop us. It just helps that your team is more rounded, so you can kind of counter it, like Ari was saying.
Got you. Speak.
No, I don't have anything to say.
Really? Okay. I really thought you were going to add something to it. That is so funny. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that because I know sometimes, just playing every now and again, there's just that one person where you're just like, oh gosh, this is going to be a problem. And you just try to figure out ways to figure it out. So That's pretty awesome. One thing I did want to ask you, since we're speaking on dominance, and I mean, you guys have the luxury of technology, so you've seen some of the older footage. You have the luxury of seeing some of just the documentary, just part 1 through 4 thus far. Who do you feel is better, or the best player that you've seen, just from a basketball standpoint? Because I feel I have my feelings, so I will share my feelings, but I will wait till all feelings are felt before I say those.
I think growing up, I was definitely a Kobe fan. I think like him and LeBron are kind of taking over this generation. So I was definitely always a Kobe fan. But I think after watching this just documentary, it's kind of like shifted my mindset to like almost picking Michael Jordan, just because like to see all the self accolades he obtained, and then to also like go in and just kind of build up his teammates. It just like shows how much of a leader he is. And yeah, I think it just makes him so much different than the other guys.
I'm definitely going to have to agree with the leadership portion. There are really good basketball players in every era, but I think the one thing Michael Jordan did well is his ability to make his teammates great, not just himself, and also the way he looked at the game. He took the mental aspect very seriously, and that's something that I really do take seriously as well. So I think from like just a fundamental and a basketball standpoint, he is one of the best to ever play, and probably will be the top for a very long time.
Gotcha. So that's your answer. Just want to make sure I say that, because that was a very political answer. Go ahead, Ari.
So I'm different than most athletes in the fact that I don't really watch athletics at all.
There we go. Okay.
I mean, I watch the Olympics. I might watch some playoffs, but actually last night I texted Courtney and said, I was watching this, and the one thing I kept thinking of is how little I know about basketball. So, but like trying to compare this to like how I view other sports and things like that, I think it's kind of hard, because like I'll use hockey for example, since I know more about that. It's hard to say like Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin versus Wayne Gretzky. Like those are two entirely different eras, two entirely different ways to play the game, as we've mentioned here many times, that basketball then and basketball now is two separate games, even though same premise, same rules. Just the culture behind it, the way it was played was slightly different. The Pistons were a heck of a lot more aggressive than is usually permissible nowadays. So I feel like it's kind of hard to say that, which one was which. But as they have said, Michael Jordan, he does have a mindset that I respect a lot more, and a much more in-depth in leadership than I've seen the others, but that's because I haven't seen a documentary on the others. So I kind of don't want to answer this question at all, mainly due to lack of knowledge.
You gotta give an answer.
I'm going to make it easier for you. I'm going to switch it just a little bit, since we're going to go to your realm. All right, we're sitting at the local skating rink, and you're playing. And all right, so it's you and another guy. You're picking teams. Who's the first player that's going to be on your hockey team?
Oh.
See, it's that easy. Who do you pick first?
I like Ovechkin better than Crosby.
There we go. See, it's that easy.
Sorry if somebody likes Crosby better, but I like Ovechkin better. So I'd probably end up going with one of the more modern picks, just because I see him play more so in the light nowadays, and the different of quality of play nowadays. So I guess I'd have to go with like LeBron in basketball then. If I equate that.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, just thinking me, I wanted to moderate, but I have to give my opinion, because I just feel it in my heart and in my soul. So I feel like there's definitely going to be Michael Jordan. That's just going to be my pick, just from a dominant standpoint, and as Courtney said throughout the call, just from a mental standpoint, like the way he approached the game, like he was going to win, and he had a different level of leadership than LeBron does. So LeBron is more of, you know, team aspect, camaraderie. I want all of my team to, you know, just play well together. And if they play well together, they're going to play well on the court together. So if we interact with each other, we're going to win. And he's been very, you know, very good at doing that. Jordan we're winning. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you have to do. Get your stuff together, put it in a pile, you know, get it all together because we're going to win. Like, that's just how you approach the game. And everyone couldn't handle it. But just one thing that I saw, or just during the recent debates, just from the standpoint of, I feel like, you know, may he rest in peace, but a lot of people are starting to forget about Kobe Bryant. I really feel about that because when it comes to the whole Michael Jordan, LeBron argument, like I feel like LeBron isn't better than Kobe to me yet. So that's just how I feel. But just coming from a leadership standpoint, this is the last question I'll ask and I'll let you guys go. Just from a standpoint of leadership, just what leadership style do you respond better to? And what do you feel is going to get you more results in the long run?
This is a tough question.
Yeah, it just came out my head just while I was talking. So I have that innate ability to talk and think. So it was pretty awesome.
I think primarily by example. I don't like it when somebody tells me to do something yet they would refuse to do it themselves. It's funny because I've always had that issue with my dad. He's always, do this. I'm like, well, why don't you do it? And he's like, because I told you to do it. So like with me, you know, if I expect my teammates to do extra runs, I'm going to do them. If I'm injured, I'm going to still show up to practice, even if I have to sit there on the side of the track, or if I have to sit there with my coach while everyone goes run 7 miles and I have to talk to my coach for an hour. I'll do it because I expect my team to do it. Even, you know, again, if I'm injured, I don't have to go to sleep early because I don't have to practice. I mean, I might be there, but I don't have to do anything. I'm still going to go to sleep early. I'm still going to do those sacrifices regardless of the condition or what's going on because I expect that to come from my team. That's part of the reason I want to get involved with everything, you know, show everyone that, hey, I do care and I expect you guys to care. I might take a lot of that responsibility off your shoulders so you can perform in other ways. But, you know, I want you guys to take on after this. I want you guys to realize, you know, if I'm going to do it, you have to do it too.
Got you. And anybody want to add on to that?
I think he kind of said it all. It's, you know, those athletes that are there before the coaches show up, that are the last ones to go home, that, you know, are putting in the extra work and like being that leader of example. And also, you know, I think sometimes you start questioning, you know, what are your words meaning if you're not putting, you know, the action to it. So I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, he said it all.
I said the only thing I'd probably add is I personally love the mentality, do whatever it takes to win. I buy into that big time. I love leadership that comes from, I don't care how it happens, we're getting it done. But I do understand that not everyone can respond well to that. So I think me leading by example would be, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I'm going to bring as many people as I can with me. That may not be the whole team, but if I can get 4 or 5 more people with me, then that's starting to really change the culture. So I think that the leadership by example is probably one of the biggest portions of any type of leadership.
Gotcha. So look at that. And so leading by example. So that is the biggest advocate. So, the biggest example of just the way that people like to be led. So, all right. So that's pretty cool. Well, it's been a while now. So I definitely want to let you guys get back to what you're doing because, I'm quarantining, so I'm looking for things to do. Like I showed you, I was painting eggs earlier.
So. Do this and study, that's for sure.
Yeah, so definitely get back to your studies. I'll definitely start to chop this up. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for breaking down The Last Dance with me. So much luck to you in your studies and stay safe out there, all right?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.